Some cities are full of vibrant and attractive places that people want to be in. Places that make you want to walk around or sit down to relax. Places that you specifically go to on vacation. But other cities are full of places that are ugly and forgettable. Places that you only visit when you have to, before leaving as soon as possible. Why exactly do we like spending time in certain places more than others? Most people might think it's because of cultural differences or the weather, but actually it has a lot to do with architecture and urban planning. In his book Cities for People, the Danish architect Gehl explains that cities must be built for people and not cars. In order to be livable, cities must be a comfortable place for basic human activities like walking, standing, sitting down, and socializing. The key is to build at a human scale, which means the buildings and public spaces need to be designed for the human body. Just like the rooms in your house, the size of city spaces need to be the right proportions to feel comfortable. One guideline we can use are the human senses. Our vision can spot a person's movement from up to 100 meters away, and so in older cities, most squares and plazas were built to be around 100 meters wide or less. For example, the Plaza Mayor in Madrid is about 90 by 130 meters, which allows you to see people's faces and all the interesting stuff around you as you walk through the plaza. The same thing is found in just about any great place that people love. In Portofino in Italy, the buildings across the harbor are less than 100 meters apart from each other, allowing you to see these colorful houses and the intricate details on them even if you're on the other side. This is why places with narrow streets and small spaces feel warm and cozy, because you're able to experience everything up close and personal. Meanwhile, places with wide roads, tall buildings, and big open spaces feel cold and hostile, because everything can only be seen from a distance. These places also feel nice because they have a sense of enclosure. The buildings act like walls that make it feel like you're in an outdoor room. People are naturally drawn to places with a sense of enclosure because of our survival instincts. Humans need to stay hidden from predators, but also have a view of their surroundings to look for prey. So in cities, the buildings provide that feeling of protection, while people can still look at everything around them. And that's probably why I love standing alone in a corner when I'm at a party. Places lack a sense of enclosure when the space is too big and the buildings are too spread out. This is common in many car-centric suburbs across North America, where the roads are wide and buildings are surrounded by large parking lots. Without a sense of enclosure, these spaces feel really uncomfortable because you're exposed from all sides. Another aspect of the human senses is that we mainly focus on things that are at eye level. That's why grocery stores place the products that they want you to buy in the middle of the shelf. So to make a place attractive, it needs lots of interesting stuff at eye level that people can look at. The simplest way to achieve this is by having shops on the ground floor of buildings while placing homes or offices above it. This is known as a mixed-use development and is pretty much the default way of building things around the world. However, many cities in North America legally cannot have buildings like this because of zoning laws that strictly separate residential and commercial areas. This creates public spaces that are devoid of people due to the long distances and the dependence on cars to get around. The buildings also have to be designed for human walking speed. The average person walks at 5 kilometers an hour, and so each building unit needs to be fairly narrow so that the street feels more diverse and interesting as people walk by. Having lots of small units also puts more destinations on the street, which makes the city more walkable and lively as there are more reasons for people to be there. Only at walking speed can people actually notice the small details around them, such as the intricate architecture or the signs and banners. These things are completely non-existent in a city built for cars, because everything is designed to be seen at high speeds. Buildings become oversized and their walls are completely blank. Signs have to be extremely big and simplified so that drivers can read them. There's no point in adding details when everyone's driving by at 50 kilometers an hour. Designing at a human scale has been the default way of building cities for most of human history. That's why so many people love visiting those old cities in Europe and Asia. Planners and architects back then really knew how to build a great place. However, this all changed in the 20th century when modernism entered the chat. Planners and architects started to prioritize big buildings and wide open spaces. Cars also started to take over cities around the world, and they were seen as the future of transportation. In North America, many old neighborhoods were demolished as part of urban renewal projects and were replaced with either highways or big apartment blocks surrounded by lawns and parking lots. Brand new suburbs were also built on the edge of cities, and they were completely designed for the car. Brazil did something even more radical by building a brand new capital city from scratch called Brasilia. This master planned city was designed in the shape of an airplane and was built primarily for cars, as big central highways ran directly down the middle of the city. The problem with these modernist developments is that planners completely ignored the human scale by designing them from a bird's eye view. This makes it hard to comprehend the size and distances that people have to navigate, resulting in spaces that are too big and lack detail. These places are really cool if you're looking down from an airplane, but are ugly and miserable at eye level. Thankfully, we know this was a mistake, and the human scale is now a pretty well-known concept among architects and urban planners. You can see this anytime you come across those new walkable neighborhoods in American cities. For the most part, these are a massive improvement from what we've been building for the past century. However, they still tend to prioritize cars too much, and the buildings are still way too big. That's why many people think these places feel weird and corporate.
You know those towns that have such a weird, unsettling vibe because they're super corporate and it's nothing but like apartment buildings and then a bunch of like random generic restaurants?
And they associate them with millennial burger joints that sell the most mediocre burgers for $30. So it's always better to make buildings and public spaces smaller. We can still have bigger buildings for more density, but ideally they should be placed on top of small buildings so that the street is still human-scaled. Cities also instantly get better when you remove cars. Cars create a lot of problems for cities such as safety, pollution, noise, and traffic. They take up significantly more space than any other form of transportation, and since cities are inherently limited in space, it is necessary to remove cars if we want good public spaces. This is something many European and Asian cities have been doing. The city of Seoul in South Korea famously tore down a major highway and replaced it with this linear park. Paris has recently been removing cars from many neighborhood streets and using all that freed up space for trees and plants. Amsterdam is removing thousands of parking spaces in the city for more trees, bicycles, and playgrounds. And Barcelona is making many streets car-free to create a city-wide network of green pedestrian streets. Cities in America are much further behind. There's traffic everywhere you go, and it feels like there's nowhere for people to simply exist. These places are built as if traffic is the only thing that matters, but building good places for people matters too. It's just nice when you can enjoy yourself outside without your whole existence being a nuisance to drivers. And we have lots of evidence to show that the built environment has a major impact on your behavior and mental health. Psychological studies found that complex and interesting building facades put people in a better mood and made strangers more likely to help each other. On the other hand, a dead and boring facade makes people unhappy and less social. Car dependency leads to inactive lifestyles and a higher tolerance for bad driving. And many surveys show that people who walk and cycle are much happier during their commutes than those who drive. As Gehl famously says,
"First we shape the cities, then they shape us."
Cities need great public spaces if they want to become lively, safe, healthy, and livable. People spend lots of time and money going on trips to Disneyland, holiday resorts, shopping malls, and vacations in Europe and Asia. Because ultimately, people like being in places that are designed for people.